Floods, bushfires, theft and illness. They're all unexpected events, but they can and do often occur. Without a formulated survival plan in place, a small business can be irretrievably damaged, and haven't we seen a lot of that in the last few years? Anthony Turner and Sandra Slatter are the co-authors of Are You Ready? Surviving Small Business Disaster.
Disasters also are not only natural in their sense in fires and floods, but also personal in terms of personal loss and man-made in terms of particularly with business in burglaries and things that people businesses need to face as a result of those other disasters. In all of those areas, they are huge setbacks for small business because not only do the small business need to cope with what every other business has to do day in, day out, and even in difficult economic circumstances, but having a huge setback like one of these certainly is very difficult for anyone to overcome. And I know that when Sandra and Anthony started their work and interviewed and worked with and mentored some 1,200 small businesses, in the 1,200 small businesses that they mentored, not one of those businesses had a disaster recovery plan. So a book like Are You Ready is absolutely important, because what Are You Ready does is it allows the learnings, it allows the histories, the cases, the research, all of those lessons to be put into practice and to allow those businesses to be able to access a hands-on manual for getting themselves established. And I think credit to the authors and credit to all of you and credit to Small Business Victoria for actually contributing and ensuring that we've got a publication like this that we can now go out and continue to promote. Are You Ready serves an important purpose in getting the message that we need business continuity planning across a larger business audience. We all know that we need to be prepared and we need to be forearmed for any potential disaster in the future, and we need to plan. We never can talk enough about planning for whatever is ahead of us in business, whether it be an economic disaster, whether it be a personal disaster, whether it be a natural disaster. And I now declare the book Are You Ready officially launched, and congratulate Sandra and Anthony. Thank you.
I think one of the first things that hits me when I talk to small business owners is to recognise what the business means to them. It's usually, you could say, a very important creative expression of their identity. And this is actually a dimension that's a bit different from somebody who's employed in a job. However much they are committed to the job, they don't feel that the whole enterprise is an expression of themselves. So when the disaster impacts on people, I think there are three main areas which have a direct psychological impact. The first is the trauma, and that really means just how bad the experience was at the time, whether the person thought they were going to die, whether they saw terrible things, and so on. And what the trauma does is lock us into those experiences so that they tend to go back over and over, and it's very hard for people then to move on. So everything then is seen in relation to those experiences, the sense of threat, even if it's not there anymore. The second one is the loss, which is both all the inconvenience of the material and financial loss, but really more importantly, the grief that always follows loss, whether it be people or whether it be this dimension of this enterprise, which is such an important product of my creative sense of self. And the last one, which I think is often underestimated, it's what I call the element of disruption. That actually after any kind of disaster, every aspect of our life is disrupted. And that means there's nothing we can just do in a routine way and therefore free our mind for more complex tasks, such as strategic planning and putting things in perspective. And so the end result of these reactions is to put the person into a state where their entire mental and emotional self is simply grappling with all these things. And then I think what we see is it's extremely hard for people to free up the mental space to do all of the technical administrative things they have to do to get going. And this is a major reason why it takes so long, that people have to get through these reactions for a while before they can actually start thinking even.
I think the key thing is that whilst doing the work with the people that have been impacted by the disasters, Sandra and I came across a lot of obstacles in finding information that was actually relevant to be able to help them through their recovery processes. Most of the information that was on the internet that we could find was very much geared towards disaster recovery in terms of data recovery and IT recovery. There was stuff that was written for government and larger organisations, but there was very, very little that was easily translatable to the person who was operating a small business. And I think individually we'd both seen that and started the idea of a book.
We were talking about the things that all these small business people were going through and all the pressures that are on them to try and get their business up and going, and not having any understanding of what laid ahead of them.
People, as they emerge from the extensive overwork that's involved, is that they actually often come into a state of, I call it identity crisis. If we work too hard for too long, we always get to the point where we ask, why am I doing this? I can't remember. Because we've actually lost touch with the real deep drivers, and this is where the idea of a business as a creative product of a person is so important. And I think when that's interfered with, that people often find, as they ought to be able to get going, they hit this question of, why am I doing this? Are my values still the same? Are my priorities still the same? Or have I lost heart in this? I don't have that extra oomph of creativity. I'd rather just work for somebody else or something. It's all too hard. So I suspect there are a lot of people that are struggling with those sort of things. And again, if they do that when they're too tired, they're actually denying that whole creative part of themselves that made them want to create the business in the first place. So I reckon this stage of the recovery is where we want people to actually get back in touch and to nurture that creativity, because that's really why small business is so important. People love what they do, and why it's such an important part of the economy.